Welcome back to the watch list. Let's talk about consumer sentiment. Came in higher than last month. People are feeling a little better as inflation has been easing some. We even got in the PCE print and that PCE signaling and easing inflation as well. Let's have a conversation about this. Eddie Yoon, founder of Eddie Would Grow and co-founder of Category Pirates, and Tony Welch, Chief Investment Officer at Signature. Thank you so much. Signature FD. Thank you so much for being with us. Eddie, I'll start with you. So we have the number coming in, 71.6, a little lower than the estimates, but above the 64 and change of the prior month. What do you think people are thinking, and why do we see such a cautious, selective type of consumer? I keep hearing that.
Yeah, I think consumers are exactly that. They're being excited about wages going up and discretionary income as well, too. But they're being cautious about whether they should or should not spend. And kind of what we're seeing is that this emergence of a smart consumer who is very savvy. They're being very price sensitive about how they spend on what I would call older categories that they're familiar with. So I wrote an article on the Harvard Business Review about Netflix and the problem of serial churners that they have. These are consumers who binge and then they bail the service. And that percentage of their subscribers in 2019 was only 3%. But in 2022, that's grown to 16% from antenna data. And so that's a real risk as consumers are savvy. And I think maybe all of us have done that at some point of we use the service and then we cut it once we don't no longer want to use it anymore. And I think consumers are being smart about how they spend their money, out with the old categories and in with new stuff.
Yeah, without a doubt. Tony, I know you're watching everything what the consumer is feeling, including the wages that they've seen, the macro story. Are they getting a little ahead of themselves? A lot of buy now, pay later.
Well, potentially. I mean, I think when you look at, I believe Eddie kind of referenced the real wage gains that we're starting to see out there. And let's be clear, that is a much more sustainable economic driver than what we've seen so far in this cycle, where we've had kind of pandemic stimulus leading the way. You had this kind of cushion that was built up and it was being worked down. But now this bump in consumer sentiment is really a direct reflection of higher disposable personal income. And as a matter of fact, the last update on that was north of 4%, which is higher than average. Real disposable personal income usually grows about 2% or so. So there's some caution out there, like Eddie was referencing and what have you, but the real wage gains, I think, is kind of the story right now.
Okay, Tony, thanks for that. Eddie, Taylornomics, tell us about your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people, as they have more of these increased wages that we were just talking about, that Taylor Swift, the queen of the music industry as she is now, is going to make $1 billion on her U.S. tour. And then in addition to that, there are places like Cincinnati that have said that their tourism dollars adjacent to the Taylor Swift spending went up $48 million just from the Taylor Swift effect. And I had this personally experienced where I had a business meeting in Nashville and hotel and airfare was skyrocketing because of that. And so now what you see is that the consumer is willing to spend on stuff that they deeply, deeply care about, that they're super excited and are new and different. And then in fact, the simple dynamic of high interest rates are keeping people in their homes. And when you don't buy a new home and all the adjacent spending, what ends up happening is the delayed big ticket items make way for smaller, immediate, and different experiences that occur. And that's going to be, I think, good in the short term as we get through this kind of temporary inflationary period. But it does bode problems longer term out as people delay those home purchases. Starter homes are 46% more expensive than they were in 2019, and delay having kids and all the associated spending with that.
You see some consolidation coming, Tony. Explain that.
I do. First, I have to compliment the Taylornomics moniker. That's great. But we do see some consolidation coming. Look, listen, heading into the year, pessimism was the name of the game. Pessimism on the economic outlook, the earnings outlook, the market itself. All of that is starting to reverse, and folks are starting to capitulate and come around to this perspective that there may be a soft landing. And in fact, we think it may feel like a soft landing for quite some time, maybe second half 2024 or later before you really run into the economic issues or problems. But that doesn't mean that the market doesn't have room for some sort of consolidation or some sort of sideways pattern with some corrective activity going forward. We just have to think, like, we have to remember that markets are forward looking. So what we've seen in this bull market thus far is we've seen markets that were moving before this story that we're seeing this week. So if that were to slow down, that would affect us.
Yeah, understood. Eddie Yoon, Eddie Would Grow, category Pirates. Tony Welch, signature FD. Thank you both very much. Great to see you.